And that political vacuum obviously exists in significant parts of Syria as well. So you're seeing political vacuum, and we know from history that vacuum is dangerous. I mean, there was a political vacuum in parts of Afghanistan in the 1990s, and we know what happened.
Right.
So obviously there are the seeds of ongoing disorder, and that's why for an organization like mine, we're positioning ourselves for a long-term conflict, not a short-term one.
Right, and a political vacuum doesn't last for long. Something always comes in to fill it, often not what you want to have come fill it. Absolutely. Well, Syria and Iraq have really been in the headlines, but there are a lot of other conflicts around the world that you deal with. I'll come back to Afghanistan later, but I'd love to give you a chance to talk a bit about all the amazing work that you guys do outside of the public eye, in South Sudan, for example, or in Yemen.
Well, look, thanks for the opportunity. I think it's important to say to people, our organization was founded by Albert Einstein 80 years ago. So we've got a remarkable man on whose shoulders we stand. He fled to the United States, fearing the rise of the Nazis in Germany. And that impulse of being able to save people from political oppression and from conflict remains an important motivator, both for our programs in the US, where we resettle 9,000 Americans every year, new Americans every year, and around the world, where we try to extend health and education, etc. You were right to mention the people who are not in the headlines. And one of the things I think we have to be careful of in the humanitarian sector is simply chasing the headlines. We've got to show our supporters that even if the media has forgotten about people in large parts of Africa, we haven't forgotten. So just to take the African continent, which is the majority of our work still, we work in 16 African countries. One of the things that strikes me as someone who's recently arrived in the United States is that the story of Africa rising doesn't seem to have reached the United States. I mean, if you're sitting in London or if you're sitting in Beijing, when you think of Africa, you think of investment opportunity, you think of economic dynamism, you think of 300 million people in the middle class, you think of a mobile telephone revolution that is transforming the economy. That side of Africa rising doesn't seem to have struck home in the US. There are far fewer venture funds going into Africa from the US than there are from Europe or elsewhere. But there is another side of the African story, and that is of Africa struggling. And if you think of a belt really running from Mali in West Africa right across to Somalia in East Africa, there is a belt of trouble, and it runs through countries as diverse as Central African Republic, a very small country, 4 million people, Democratic Republic of Congo, 70 million people. Somalia, Americans will have their own memories of that. And in those countries, you've got this very toxic combination of poverty, conflict, poor governance, resource stress, because climate change is a reality that we're seeing every day in Africa. And that toxic combination means that you have very high degrees